Thank you. Let me add my thanks to everyone. I know we're getting close to lunch, so thank you all for sticking around. I also want to thank Tonda and Robin for making the toy industry so welcome and a part of these sessions this morning. Earlier, you heard from my colleague, Ken Sider. I wanted to now talk a little bit more about why we're here. As we walk around CES and then just in our everyday lives, we have seen and continue to see the technology advances and how it impacts our lives. And the toy industry is no different. You look at what, in fact, Juniper research shows that between 2011 and 2015, the sale of smart toys will increase from just under $3 billion to over $11 billion. A lot of the companies and people in this room will be behind that creativity and innovation, and will bring new fun and play experiences to kids. That's very exciting. A lot of those are members of our association, and others we hope will become members. Because just as certain as all that will happen, so will the scrutiny by legislators and governments, not only here in this country, but around the world. So that's part of what we want to talk about today. I have two folks here who are really experts in those two respective fields. John Coyne, now with OSMO, but he's been with Mattel and Activision and Bandai. He'll tell you a little more about that and how he has really worked his way through a lot of the technology and stayed ahead of a lot of the issues that are with us today. Sheila is a partner with an international law firm with an office in Washington and is of counsel to the association on a lot of the issues we want to talk about in terms of that government scrutiny and why people in this audience and others really need to be sure that they know what kind of responsibility and oversight the governments are coming after this industry with. Let me just take a second and tell you why I'm up here talking about this and what our association is about so that you know that we really do spend a lot of time on this. First of all, our association's over 100 years old. We are approaching 1,000 members, and hopefully there's a lot of you in this room that are already members. If you're not, hopefully at the end of this session, you'll know that maybe you should be, because we have a lot of expertise, training, education, and compliance issues that we will share with you. Make sure that as you are working on some of this new technology, you know what you have to do to be able to market and sell those products. A key focus of our association really is in three areas. One, we help you sell and market your products. Two of our biggest areas we do that are at Playfair, coming up in February. And over the last couple of years, we've also started a new consumer show that is really taking off and has been a huge success. Parents and kids come in and really have a great time with our member companies' products. As you heard, if you were here early this morning, you heard Ken and his excellent panel talk about our Genius of Play program, another way that we try to promote products. The third and last area I just want to touch on is my area, because I head up our advocacy program for the association out of our Washington, D.C. office. We have folks who work every day at the state, federal, and international levels on regulations that are impacting toy companies. And more over the last few years, one of the highest priority areas is on connected toys. In the last year, the Federal Trade Commission, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the FAA on drones, Congress, state attorneys general, and even the FBI have made inquiries and weighed in on connected toys and the safety and security of children. So that's a lot of what we do, and safety is always our top priority, whether that's with traditional toys or now increasingly with online and connected toy activity. I just wanted to put up here, since we've worked so hard on it in the last year, I show it wherever I can, our new mission statement, but that really tells you what our association is about and how we do a lot of the activity with our members through committees and others to really champion play and to make sure that safety is at the forefront of all that we do. So with that, how I thought we'd do this session is I'm going to ask these folks a few questions each, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for some questions from the audience. But again, I really want to address the two aspects of this session. One is, what is the future of technology? Where are we now? Where are we going? And what do you need to know to make sure that as we move into advances in technology with toys, that you know all of the laws and regulations, or you know where to come and make sure that you find that out. So let me start with John. John, why don't you, I introduced a little bit about your background, but why don't you talk a little bit about how those positions in those previous companies and now as the Chief Marketing Officer and and marketing magician for OSMO. You've seen technology progress and where you see it today and what you're working on.
Sure thing. Quick question. How many people in the audience would say that they work in the field of play or toys? Okay, just getting a sense. And how many people are based in a country other than the US? Okay, cool, great. As you can tell, I'm also from a country other than the US. Yeah, my career, I've been in the play industry for just over 20 years. I know I look a lot younger. I started with a company called Mattel, where I was there for 11 years, started in the UK, worked on many of their franchises and brands, both internationally and domestically. Then I moved to another toy company that back then wasn't anywhere near the size of Mattel. Now it is. That company was called Spin Master, and I worked on setting up an office for them in LA. And then I made a jump to work for a video game company called Activision, that I'm sure many of you have heard of as well. And at Activision, I was fortunate to work really from the start and then see it sort of all the way through to the huge growth that we saw on a initiative that eventually became known as Skylanders. Hands up if you've heard of Skylanders. That's a few of you. More of you should check it out. So Skylanders was a very successful combination of physical play meets technology and digital play. And that has been an area that I find incredibly intriguing and fascinating, and something that I see very much part of my future, especially now with the company that I'm in, which is a company called OSMO. And OSMO, again, combines physical play with digital play in unique and compelling ways. So I think, in a way, my career has almost been a mirror of sort of toys meets technology.
Thank you, John. Sheila, moving from that experience, seeing where connected toys have come, some of the issues ahead, what do you see as the chief legal compliance requirements that companies should be aware of and know about as they bring these products to market?
Sure. So I think there's one important thing to keep in mind when we think about the legal framework that applies to dealing with kids' products. And that is that kids just are not little adults. They have different emotional, physical, cognitive, social abilities. And within that range of what we call kids, there's a huge variety, as any of you know from the kids who you love in your life. A 2-year-old is vastly different from a 5-year-old, is vastly different from a 10-year-old. Within that framework, there are 3 areas where we look to legal compliance obligations. First is privacy and data security, where we not only have COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, where I think, which has been mentioned earlier today, we have student privacy laws, we have an array of state privacy and data security laws, we have active enforcement actions from state attorneys generals, the Federal Trade Commission, and coming down the pike. Anybody not heard of the General Data Protection Regulation? That privacy law establishes new requirements on collecting data from children, defined very differently than we define it in the US. So that's number 1. Number 2, product safety. As Ed mentioned, the Toy Association, has safety as its first mission. There are a variety of complex requirements that apply to the safety of toys. They have to be third-party tested in the US. There are somewhat different standards that apply around the world. So when you are marketing a product, you need to know where your product is going so you can develop compliance strategies. And then the third is advertising. I think what's interesting today is that we see advertising about how privacy and security are applied in your operations. We see advertising about the ability to use play experiences to learn. Any advertising claim has to be substantiated by a reasonable basis. So I think those are my top three. Privacy and data security, product safety, and advertising are going to touch everything you do and create compliance obligations for you, which may differ depending on where you're marketing your product.
Great. And at our association, we work very closely with our members. One of the key committees that does a lot of work is our Marketing to Children Committee, and we look at all of these issues. GDPR, which Sheila mentioned in the EU, that's going into effect in May. We have a sister organization in Brussels, the Toy Industries of Europe, that we work very closely with, so we can share this information and make sure that we're giving it back to our members as these developments occur. John, with that kind of background that you explained in your different positions, as you look forward in your current position, what do you and your company and others see as sort of the future or the near-term future direction of technology in toys?
Oh, we know exactly what it's going to look like, but I can't possibly share that now. That's, you know, it's that's an interesting and tough question, and I think it depends. Are you looking at the future solely of toys, or are you looking at the future of play? And are you looking at both of those things? I do think that technology in many different forms is going to play, pardon the pun, a more interesting and diverse sort of function in how you interact with toys and how you play and how play is augmented. I do think that technology can help make play even more engaging, and finding ways to harness that way to augment those experiences is interesting. But as a lowly marketing person, you know, I tend to leave those things to people much smarter than me.
Ed, can I ask one question?
Sure.
No.
Okay. Well, as I walked around Toy Fair last year, I noticed that there were a lot of AR kinds of experiences. And it used to be that someone asked me about it, and I said, well, it used to be everything needs AA batteries on the side. And nowadays, it's on the package. It says download our app. And, you know, that means that you have to have a smartphone or some, you know, device. And I'm curious to see, this is relatively new. How are you guys seeing sort of the whole AR/VR connection? How much of it is just sort of a gimmick, or how much? And what's the smoke and what's the fire in this space?
John, you want to?
You know, it's really, this is something that I've talked a lot about with colleagues. You know, AR and kids, AR augmented reality. You know, I prefer to talk about augmenting imagination versus augmenting reality. And I think you know, you can almost take it back. Most toys, I would say, whilst they play a part in augmenting imagination, you know, you could pick up a stick and use it as a lightsaber, or you can have a toy lightsaber and it helps augment that play. So I think there are different ways of looking. Are you augmenting reality, or are you augmenting imagination? And when you augment imagination, what can you do to make play even more fun and even more engaging? Otherwise, it does just become a gimmick, and I think kids are fairly smart and see through gimmicks fairly quickly. Did that answer your question?
That was awesome. Yeah, that was a good potential tweet there. I hope someone got it out there. Augmented imagination.
Let me turn back to Sheila. Sheila, what do you see as some of the primary due diligence questions that companies in the audience or folks in the audience might want to think about?
So from a legal standpoint, there's always a standard set of due diligence questions. When we talk about connected products or AR, VR engagements with toys, we're talking about collaboration of physical and tech. And so all those legal obligations that I talked about come into play. I think the one key to a successful relationship is those discussions that establish that you share the same commitment to protecting kids and to building trust with parents. That is at the heart of, I think, why toy companies are successful. It's an engaging play experience, helping them harness that imagination, adding that extra secret sauce the tech provides to the play experience, and making sure that you trust your business partners, that they understand the legal framework and that you are able to divide up your responsibilities appropriately so that you all know what you're responsible for. And frankly, you need to take responsibility for the things that are within your control.
All right, John, we have a little bit of time, and we'll leave a minute or so for questions. But any other trends or things that might influence your thinking as you're moving forward with your company and some of your products?
Trends are a tricky one. I mean, because by the time people are noticing trends, they've kind of already passed. You know, one thing that surprised me greatly last year was the trend of the fidget spinners. You know,
there's a product safety issue for you.
But if someone would have shown me that prior to it becoming the hot trend and said, you know, do you want to distribute this? What do you think of this? I'd have, you know, but who would have known? Right. I think the trick is identifying things that have got potential or are interesting, like I do, you know, the idea of unboxing, which is obviously something that, on surprise, is something that kids always love, and I think that the way one of the toy companies harnessed that idea of surprise and delight and unboxing and turned it into an incredibly successful toy this past year. Right. That's a good example of harnessing a trend.
Absolutely. Well, I want to keep us on time. We didn't have time for questions, but you're going to have our emails, and we will be around for some afternoon sessions as well. If we did not have a chance to get to your questions, please search us out. We'd be happy to talk with you and tell you more about these issues. Thanks again to everybody for being here and for your attention. And thank you, panel.